Good morning, everyone. Or is it afternoon already? But at least we've had 2 coffees, so that's working in our advantage this morning. Afternoon. It is a cold, snowy, but bright December day, which is great for working on the van. We've got a couple loose ends on the 2 projects we tackled first, which are studs and insulation. We need to put up ceiling studs and we need to insulate our passenger side sliding door because we're losing a lot of heat out of that and it is a lot more complicated to deal with than the rest of the van, so we've been leaving it till the very end. But today's the day. Now that we're on the final stages of the bones of this van, which are the studs and the insulation, it's time to move on to the more exciting things, which is actually planning out our van build. I've spent a little too much time on Illustrator these last couple of weeks planning out what the inside of this van is going to look like. It's time to start bringing that to life. So this week I'm gonna walk you through our plans. We're gonna measure them out on the floor so that we have an idea of where things need to go, because the next thing we need to do is get some walls up, and we can't do that unless we know where they're gonna be going.
We're using 1/4-inch maple for our ceiling studs, and the reason we're doing that is, well, we had originally intended on using 1/2-inch shiplap, but Kirsten and I both decided because this van is a mid-roof, we want to save as much height in the ceiling as possible. So we're going to be getting this like 1/8 of an inch revolutionary plywood to put on the ceiling. We're going to paint it, and hopefully it's going to look like one solid piece. This 1/4-inch maple is really high quality wood. We've already put one stud up as a test. I love it. It's great. It's really, really solid, and it seems extremely sturdy. Unfortunately, we had to screw into the metal beams. We really didn't want to do that, but we just don't have an alternative at this point. Maybe this will give you a little bit more perspective as to why we're trying to save all the ceiling height we can. I am 5'10", and I'm already losing headspace by the day. By the time we put our studs up and our ceiling up, I won't be able to stand up straight. In fact, I already can't stand up straight. I'm a little bit hunched over. When we bought this van, we knew that was going to be an issue, but instead of putting a full inch of like ceiling up, we're only gonna be putting about 3/8 of an inch, which is a big improvement. We're gonna be leaving this ceiling stud here for today, and the reason is we're gonna be running a conduit or some sheathing for electrical wires across here, and we're gonna need to have access to these holes so that we can put zip ties through it. And if we put a stud on the bottom, we're not gonna have access anymore. We were debating installing a window in the sliding door, but because we have the rear doors in this van, we just don't think it's necessary. But we do feel like it's important to insulate the sliding door, especially because we've done a good job insulating the walls, the ceiling, and the floor. It would kind of be a crime to just leave the sliding door completely exposed to the elements.
And that's why it's time to open up an arts and crafts studio, because we've got to get a little bit more creative on how to insulate this. So the idea is to create a tufted wall. Essentially what it's going to be comprised of is foam board cut to fit this area here, and then we're going to add some batting on top, pull some cloth around it, and then we're going to use the leftover stick pins that we have from the ceiling to stick it onto the here, because we can't put any nails in here and we don't want adhesive either, because adhesive wears down over time. We don't know if it's going to work yet, but we might as well try.
That's not so bad.
And I just need to do a little more off this side.
How's it look?
99.99%. Okay. Other than being really cold, one of the disadvantages of converting a van in December is the days are really short. The sun starts to go down at 4:30 p.m., which shortens our days by probably about 4 hours compared to the summer. So yesterday when we were trying to change this foam board into this wall panel, we lost daylight. But I'd say it turned out pretty good. My sewing skills have improved a bit. We had to hand stitch in the corners here and seam it all together to pull it together, because you can't use a sewing machine to make a covering for a wall panel like this. But now the moment of truth. We've tested it. Now we just need to make sure that it actually fits in the door in final form, because really, I don't want to unravel all this sewing. Ah, it's a winner. It turned out. It's actually way better than I expected. In order to make this wall panel, we started by cutting a leftover piece of foam board to fit the wall panel of the sliding door. This posed a little bit more tricky because we had to make a small indent for the handle and also for the locking mechanism. Then we took this inside, covered it in about 1 inch of batting, and then took a piece of fabric and covered it, pinned it all around, and then stitched it all up. We're going to be putting this on using the stick pins that we used in the ceiling, which then we're going to finish off with the washers and put some buttons on top to make it look like a tufted wall, only kind of like a fake tufted wall. Now to see if it'll actually stay up. It's not a lot heavier than the foam board was on its own, but now we're gonna put the stick pins here, here, and here, I think. You might be wondering if this is the finished product. It's not quite yet, but we're not quite ready to finish this off completely. We've covered buttons with the same material to create these that will go over top to just make it look a lot cleaner. The only thing is my prototype is just not quite right. So I've got to go back to the drawing board and then we can finish this off. But in the meantime, we're gonna move on to the next project that we have to get done before we can actually get the walls up in our van.
And that's to get the cardboard off the bottom door panel so that we can put the rest of our Havelock wool in the bottom part of the sliding door so that it'll be decently insulated. It's not gonna be perfect because we were not able to get wool in the frame of the door, but we need to get the stick pins and a few screws out so we can get that cardboard off, get behind the door panel, and insulate it. And we are thinking about putting a piece of plywood on there as well, so we have to get inside to see if it's something that we're gonna be able to do. So the goal here is to take these off and save the cardboard in case we're not able to put a piece of plywood in. And apparently they come out really easily, and if you're just gentle with it. Yeah, there you go. That will be reusable. All right, there we go. So for the Captain Obvious moment of the day, clearly this is the door panel with the door mechanisms, and this is the reason why you don't really want to screw into the door panel unless they've given you a place to screw into it. Because you wouldn't want to puncture one of these wires and screw your door mechanism up and never be able to unlock it again. We might even be able to just peel it halfway back, shove the wool in there, and put it back up. I think we're gonna get a piece of plywood and use the pins and screws that they've used to put the door cover on here to try and make this look a little bit nicer. And we might even try and match the bottom cabinets to the paint that we use on this piece of plywood that's gonna go up against the door. And hopefully this van will start looking a little bit more cohesive once the walls go up. Some cabinets go in. It's gonna start feeling a little bit like home.
Okay, now that that is all sealed back in and this is officially well insulated, we need to talk about the plans for this van. I've spent hours scrutinizing over every single inch of this van because we only have 139 inches of interior space to work with, which means every inch really does matter. In order to move to our next step, which is electrical, we need to map out exactly where everything is going to be in this van so that we know where to run those wires. We took the liberty to tape out exactly where everything is going to be in our van based on the plans that we mocked up in Adobe Illustrator. It's amazing to see it come to life and have an idea of where everything is going to be. Welcome to our not so finished crib. First, you got to start by taking your shoes off and switching into some good Canadian Sherpa slippers. Right here is going to be a cabinet unit. You can see we've taped it out here. And this is gonna house our toilet as well as our garbage and hopefully our shoe storage somewhere in here. It's not a lot of space, but it'll do. Straight ahead through the door is going to be our kitchen area. This is pretty typical to put your kitchen here in a van, and we feel like for us this works the best as well. So we've marked out exactly where it's going to be here with a partition wall behind the driver's seat. and it's gonna come out to about here, which is exactly 46.5 inches. Hopefully that's exactly how it works out, because I don't want to lose any more space than that. I've also marked out how high our counters are gonna be, so they're gonna be waist height. We're both decently tall people, so we went with standard counter height, which is 36 inches. You can imagine this, there'll be upper cabinets here that run the full length up to the bed. Here will be our sink, here will be our fridge, and here will be our electrical cabinet. So all of our wires are gonna run along this parallel here, which works really well for the dispersion of electricity in our van. So if you can imagine this, this will be our living room slash lounge slash also garage. We're gonna have about a 16-inch high couch that's here that has a back that comes up to about 30 inches or 34 and a half if I'm correct. And then more upright cabinets here to house all of our clothing and accessories and whatnot. So it should give us ample space to keep all the tools we've collected, as well as our tents and bags that we need to travel with, and all of our hiking gear. And last, this is where the most important thing in this entire van happens: the bed. You can just imagine right here, pull down Murphy bed that will sit in this cabinet here with some shelving behind it that we can use to add additional storage. I'm pretty happy with how it's gonna work out. We've worked really hard to accommodate a full-size bed or a double bed, which is 54 by 74 inches, which is really hard to do in a van that's only 139 inches long. That concludes the end of this video. A bit of planning and a little bit of finishing up some projects. All of our preliminary plans are going to be available in a link below in the description if you want to check them out, and if you want to give us any suggestions, although it's possible we'll be too far down the road by the time this video comes out. Thank you so much to our Patreons. We're so thankful to have you and to make videos like this possible.
Here it is, our little door project finally almost finished. And this is a piece of 1/4 inch maple plywood. I think it's turned out absolutely awesome. What we did was cut the stencil out, then we painted a coat of primer and then 2 coats of final finish on here, and all of a sudden we have a nice board. We did have to cut some holes that reflect the plugs and the screws that were used to keep the original piece of cardboard up, so that they're gonna keep our piece of plywood up. The final thing we had to do was glue some sort of like little felt pad on the back, because that's exactly what Ford did with their original model. We weren't able to find something exactly the same as what they used, so we just used an old piece of shirt and super glued it to the back. You gotta be creative sometimes with what you have. But now, the last step is to actually put this up on the door panel, and then we are gonna have an insulated door that has a covering that matches our cabinets. Oh yeah, look at that. Is that good or what?
That's sick.
Oh, that looks amazing. It's actually perfect.
It's perfect.
It's perfect.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.